inevitably is that we'll show you the comments and someone will read one comment and say, yes, this is what everybody thinks. No, it's what one person wrote. So spend some time studying the data. I'll email this to Dale tonight so that you all then can have a copy of the report to kind of spend some time. And then in a couple of days, we'll give you the comment and the comment analysis, and you can use that to kind of frame in the rest of your story. I would say this is unique in the fact that we don't have clear direction as far as one wing or two buildings. I think the leaning, because of the cost, is to the wing, and the fact that, again, if people are wanting to solve all of the problems and the educational inadequacies, we knew you needed $35.8 million to do that with your two existing buildings, and at least how it was presented. So just know that, but certainly you could use the comments as a piece to say, all right, what is it we do now?
Sue, how often in your experience, I know you use the word unique, do you have any sort of gauge how many times in your career you've seen a survey come back this close?
Yeah, not often. I mean, we've done hundreds of these, and usually it'll be like a 70-30 split, or we'll say, oh, there's clear direction, or 60-40. So as this was coming in, I kept waiting for the shoe to drop, like we were going to have a leaning one way or the other, and it just kept hanging out that people were really kind of that dead even heat. And then, then we start pulling the data apart like we did into the different groups and thinking, okay, your general citizens will pull away, or there'd be a huge difference between your parents, which was what I really thought would happen, because many times parents, they're the ones most invested in what happens in the school. Your general citizens are likely more interested in what's it going to cost me, and we just didn't see that with your data. So I think your citizens, I think you're split. I think what we do know is people are willing to pay something, and they understand you've got a need, and you've got about 32-ish million to play with. But in that was, if you think 32, 33, a portion of that needs to be set aside to address some of those needs those couple of needs at your secondary building.
Sue, are you able to quantify with a percentage projection on how, what would be the potential for a success rate with either one? Like,
well, I think the most important thing is going to be staying within that tax threshold. I mean, that's really the most important piece. So what is it going to cost me? Districts that listen to that data likely will have success. And so, we can look here at that, and we can tell you with a high degree of certainty kind of where that threshold is, sitting between that 32 and 33 million. This tells me that the majority of your community will support a bond. So perhaps there's some more work to be done, and are we turning right or left as far as moving to one way and maintaining your two buildings? I would simply say that if maintaining the two buildings remains on the table, to just think apples to apples as far as how we presented this, that you don't want to leave educational inadequacies. So as we represented the options, we really were solving as many, if not all, of the educational problems or needs, and to really position the district well for the future, as well as we talked about the fact that you would have operational efficiencies in moving to a one campus or one unified site. So I think those are all things that need to be kept in consideration as you look and have deeper conversation and explore more. Do I wish I could tell you were 70-30? Yeah. But it does kind of tell you that your community, that's a conversation that needs to continue as you make your decisions moving forward.
Of the surveys that you've done in the past, Sue, how often has consolidation been the kind of the front runner in that 70-30 mix that you're talking about?
Yeah, I would say most of the time. I can think of just a few times where, in those cases when it has been, let's keep schools open and not consolidate, it's because of the distance. So if we've got perhaps a consolidated district already that had elementary schools in outlying communities, and so kids were going to be on buses for significant amounts of time, those types of issues, that then we may see communities saying, nope, we want to invest in or keep those buildings open. In your case, the cost, you were a little unique as well, because many times the cost to maintain or update the existing buildings is less, and so it might cost more to do that initial one wing. But we usually then, say, well, with the operational savings, that investment of more money makes sense. In your case, it was going to cost more to maintain and update those two buildings than it was to move to that one unified campus.
Because
so
one is brand
you had
new.
some uniqueness in what your costs and what were not bad, just different. And so as we presented it, some folks were going to say, well, for the one that is the least expensive, so we may have had some of that as well.
So do you think there might be an opportunity to go out, if we went out with a survey with, if we decided, well, this is too close, and we wanna go out with a survey with different choices than we just brought forward, to try and see if we can get closer to that 70%, is that an option? Have you ever seen anybody
Yeah,
for multiple
in
surveys?
a perfect world, I wouldn't want you to have to pay for another survey. You kind of know you're sitting at, that $32 million mark, and perhaps your next phase of it is to work with your architect and construction management team and kind of do that next level of community engagement where you start going out and putting some plans out and saying, all right, given these two, what do you think? I mean, the biggest piece is, am I willing to own the tax increase, and do I acknowledge that an investment is needed? And, we've gotten you a yes and yes in those, right? We acknowledge an investment that's going out for a bond is needed. We've got that nod, and we can tell you where you're sitting as far as tax increase. So now, what are those two options? What could those two options, really, is that turn right or turn left? What could those look like? And then putting all the cards on the table. So talking about operational efficiencies of one option might be slightly greater than the other. And yet, what would that look like, and how would it benefit the community to maintain those two existing elementary schools? So I don't know if I'd do another survey. That makes me a bad survey salesperson, I suppose. But I think you could do that within some community listening sessions and engaging your citizens.
Yeah, I guess my
But
only,
if you want to survey again, we sure could.
my only concern with that is it costs us more if we fail than if we take another survey.
Now that you got all the information, I'm sure the second survey is cheaper.
Yep, and we can typically, then what we do is we tighten it up and do like a 4-page survey where okay, you've given us, we previously surveyed, you gave us these
Still long.
records, we've worked through a process, now here's where we're at, give us a thumbs up, thumbs down, which way should we go, pick one.
Sue, I'm wondering with, these types of results, I know, initially our kind of our timeline was looking at potentially trying to get something out in the spring on a ballot, and being hopeful that we would get, really strong kind of one way or the other to kind of help guide a little bit of our decision making. I'm just wondering,
Yep.
when it's something like this, is it feasible to think in the time frame that we would have between now and May-ish, right? It would be May. Do you have any thoughts on if that is a feasible timeline in terms of this kind of data?
The unique situation.
Yeah, we didn't get definitive data on which way to start your elementary school project, I agree. But we always tell districts you go when you're ready, when you've completely worked through a community engagement process and you feel you have support. Does it make sense to pause and really continue to vet the two options and look at August or look at November? Certainly, I think I would keep both of those on the table. November's good, I just had a conversation with someone earlier today. November's gonna be noisy. But if you go, I wouldn't fear it. You go when you're ready. My concern with going in August is your staff and your parents are highly supportive of a bond, especially greater than the 29.7. You need these people at the polls, and parents and staff members in August typically aren't thinking school, and your lives are a little finishing up vacation, a little less regulated during that August time frame. So my recommendation is if April or May comes off the table, you may pause and wait until November.
But then that also then would be, we'd have to work closely with architecture or whoever, because obviously then the
Right.
pricing is gonna differ just because every time we do that pushback, so what we
Yep.
have kind
Yep,
of
you'll
roughly
miss those
proposed.
opportunities.
For a May election, May 12th election, the board needs to adopt a resolution by February 28th to conduct the election. So that gives you 7 weeks.